Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Must be a duplex.
It's always a wonderful surprise when you revisit something that you enjoyed as a kid to discover that it still holds up. The Pagemaster is a combo live-action and animated movie released in 1994 that has been completely forgotten. I wouldn't have known about it if I hadn't religiously watched the VHS my parents bought. Macaulay Culkin, here at the height of his fame, plays Richie Cunningham, a precocious preteen paranoiac. His beleaguered father charges him with going to the hardware store to pick up some nails. On the way, Richie is caught in a storm and takes refuge in a mysterious library where the only person still inside is the librarian, Mr. Dewey. You know, like the Dewey Decimal System? Dewey is electrified by the prospect that somebody actually wants to check out books instead of playing Roblox on the PCs, but Richie rebuffs him, saying he just wants to use the phone. On his way there, he has a nice PG-rated concussion and runs away from the terror of early 90s CGI. He's transformed into a cartoon.
A cartoon.
You are an illustration.
An illustration, and is tasked by the magisterial Pagemaster on a journey through the library that'll be a little bit more difficult than a trip to the hardware store. On his quest, he's joined by 3 books: adventure, horror, and fantasy, who dream of being checked out of the library. The live-action segments were directed by Joe Johnston and the animation by Pichote Hunt, but neither one clashes with the other because they're both on the same page and tone. The Pagemaster's success is in presenting itself like a horror film, and in how it plays with size and distance to create a sense of imperiousness. The library is bigger than any you would expect to find within biking distance of the suburbs, but that's because it's supposed to look as large as it would feel to Richie. The effect is multiplied 10,000-fold when he's transformed. James Horner's music completes the images. He would go on to win the Oscar for Titanic just a few years later, so he's at the height of his powers here. The real marvel is how the score is able to move through so many different modes, from the heroic to the unsettling to the whimsical. The main theme of the movie also flows through these permutations, culminating in a song at the end of the second act. The production is a little too 80s and would have been behind the times even when the movie came out, but it's still beautiful. What makes the movie work so well is that it doesn't pull any punches by softening events for children. Richie's journey is legitimately dangerous. His imagined paranoias are pitiful compared to the terrors he confronts along the way. As a result, his growth feels earned. Combine this with the visuals and music, and the result is that this movie genuinely scared me as a kid.
Dr. Jekyll.
Dr. J?
My name is
But the Pagemaster is also pulling double duty. It's not just a morality play about a young boy facing his fears, but also an epistle on the virtues of reading. This is double the risk of 90s cheese, but the Pagemaster nimbly skips over that pitfall with nuanced performances and majestic imagery. It doesn't feel like an after-school special. That's because the main conflict isn't Richie's reluctance to read books, it's his fearfulness. If the story wrapped up with, "Geez, Mr. Pagemaster, I used to think reading was for lamos, but now I know that books are radical," that would be an embarrassment. The biggest criticism of the movie is that it's really short. It's only 75 minutes long, and that's including the 7-minute credits. The upside of this is that the story hits all the beats it needs to, and doesn't waste time. The downside is that there's a subplot involving adventure and horror that doesn't really go anywhere. They bicker, horror runs off, then adventure rescues him. It resolves itself in 5 minutes and doesn't have any impact on the rest of the plot. There were supposedly production difficulties with the animation going over budget, so I can see how this subplot was winnowed down from something more substantial. The Pagemaster has been completely forgotten by everyone, that is, if they even saw it in the first place. With a budget of $34 million, it only made a brutal $13.4 million back. That's not even half of what it cost. It wasn't well received by critics either, so it was shit-canned fast and everyone moved on. Macaulay Culkin retired next year, but that's why I'm here to tell you about it, and try to grant it, well, a revival is asking too much, but a small remembrance. Don't leave this one gathering dust on the shelves. Check it out.